Alrighty, welcome sixth graders. So today we'll be looking at lesson 2 of our reading on Greece. And it's over how geography shapes Greece not only uh, in terms of resources but also in terms of government. Alright, so our notes for today are going to be in outline form. Alright, so geography. The landscape of Greece is very mountainous, very few areas of flat land. And because of this, um, they considered themselves islanders because they were isolated from each other so much. Literally some civilizations grew up in islands, others because they were in valleys. They didn't really have a lot of connectivity to other Greek cultures very early on in their beginning stages. So eventually they kind of form and get together more, but otherwise they don't. So because of the physical nature of the place and also being surrounded by so much water, it helps them to link to the outside world, and two, it also helps them with their trading and growth of their economies, which is what a lot of the we'll be focusing on later. All right. So governing the city-state. City-state was the number one form of government at this time. So instead of having the country of Greece, we have independent little pockets of city-states. So each one, as we see on this map here, so Delphi, Corinth, Olympia, Sparta, Athens, Milos. All right, those are all independent city-states. Consider them all little independent nations. All right. And so a lot of them would have an acropolis, and that is, just a high point. That's where the god or priestess or god or goddess would be worshipped. All right. And so because of the way the city was built, the government forms. At first, the governments are monarchies. They're ruled by kings. And then we have this shift to the aristocracy. And aristocracy, they're your rich people, your higher class, the highest. In the United States today, we call them the 1%ers. Okay, and that's who they would be at this time. But because of the expansion of trade and more people trading, you start to see that it's not just this small select few that are going to be ruling in terms of the aristocracy, but it's going to be a larger group known as an oligarchy, which is ruled by a few. So even though they're kind of similar, they're a little bit different, and we'll dive deeper into that in class. So then all of this leads to a lot of fighting. Whenever you have governments evolving, you're always going to have people who are going to rebel against the government or try to, get their footing in the area. So because of changes in military technology, so, what that means is better ships, faster ships, stronger weapons, more people. New styles of fighting, this all leads up to different types of warfare. And the two main city-states that Greece is known for are Athens and Sparta, and each of them develops kind of their own unique situation. And that's because of their city-states, and they have to they have to adapt to the areas in which they live. All right, so first look at Sparta, warrior society. If you've ever heard anything about Sparta before, you know that they like to fight. Okay, and a lot of that is because of their daily life is ruled by discipline. Not to say that because you are disciplined means that you want to fight, but where Sparta lived within the world, they had to have a strong army. So from birth, boys were prepared for military life. It was very strict, very harsh discipline, but it resulted in the best soldiers in almost probably history. And so because of this, the whole society focused on developing the male soldiers. So the role of the women was then seen as different. They weren't expected to do much more than provide healthy, strong sons for the army. And don't get me wrong, the women of Sparta were very strong themselves. They had to be to do this because within Spartan society, they felt that if a child had a defect of any kind at birth, then that child would be left for dead, basically. Um, and so that was very high on their priority list within their culture, their civilization. And so the women had to produce strong children to be able to accompany that. So again, must obey their husbands. But one uniqueness of Sparta is that women could inherit property. The men were going off and dying in wars all the time. So to be able to make sure that the property remained in good hands and sound and prosperous, women could inherit this property. But they also ran the households while the men were at war. All right. So now Athens. And Athens is starkly different than Sparta in that. So again, the government goes from a monarchy to an aristocracy. But this really creates a resentment in the merchants and soldiers. They really feel that because they're the ones that are doing most of the everyday work, that they should have some kind of say in the government. It doesn't exist yet, but at this time in Greek history, that's what they feel it should be. And a lot of these artisans are banned against, I should say against, not against, citizens as well as the farmers, mainly because the artisans are the ones that are producing all of these great things that all these great works that the aristocrats are selling off. So why can't we be part of the citizenry? And to be a citizen within Athens, you actually had to, both of your parents had to be born of Athenian parents. So if your father was Athenian but your mother was a foreigner, you couldn't be an Athenian citizen. Um, if you're, and vice versa. If your dad was a foreigner and your mom was born of Athenian parents, so your mom had to be Athenian from Athenian parents, and your dad had to be from Athenian parents. If somewhere along the line that wasn't there, you couldn't be uh, a citizen, and so that was a very small, select group of the population. Uh, so up along comes one of the first strong rulers of Athens is Solon, and he comes along with these different reforms, and he's appointed this chief official in 594 BC. He gets rid of this idea of debt slavery, and this goes back to the farmers demanding changes because for a while they didn't have enough, or the farmers were going in such debt that they either A, had to sell off their farms to the nobles, or B, they had to sell themselves and their families into slavery to be able to pay off the debt that they had owed. So he outlaws this, and all these people who once were farmers who are now slaves are then set free. And then some of the economic reforms is that he encourages the export of wine and olive oil, which then in return helps the farmers because now there's an increase of demand on wine and grapes for these goods. So he's able to help boost the economy again and help get more people to do there. However, the citizenship still remains small, and then again this continues to this unrest of this, and so eventually this leads to a tyrant or tyrants stepping up, which don't get me wrong, tyrants can be evil, but we're going to go over a couple of them here that actually did really good things for Greece. All right, so a couple of these tyrants who do well are Pisistratus and Cleisthenes. Okay, so Pisistratus is able to gain more power from the aristocracy by taking land and forgiving the loans from the farmers, by taking that land away from the nobles and giving it back to the farmers. He also then starts creating new buildings within Athens, and what this does is it gives the poor more jobs so that they can, keep working along those lines. And then Cleisthenes also he broadens the power of ordinary citizens, and he does this by creating this Council of 500, which basically is like today's legislative branch. So if you were a male citizen over the age of 30, you had to become a member of this assembly, and you were expected to participate in your voting. So even if you weren't part of the rich, however, but you were an Athenian male, then you could participate in this government, this democracy. All right. So when their definition of democracy, again, is more limited than what ours is. Ours is everybody. Theirs was restricted to only land-owning men, which at first the Constitution says that only land-owning men could do this. So if you were a male citizen but yet didn't own land, if you rented an apartment, you therefore could not be part of the government. However, this is still a huge step forward for the idea of democracy, because Athens is really the only one who gives citizens rights to vote. Most other instances are more like Sparta, where it's an oligarchy and it's run by the elders of the city-state. Okay, so women in Athens has a lot to. They have. They're more like Spartan women in that they don't have a very large role to play within society, but at the same time, they don't have as much power as Spartan women do as well, in that they can't own property. So, their most significant role was in religion, when they would help take part in sacred processions and ceremonies, and they're kind of considered essential for the well-being of the city, especially Athens, since Athens is named after Athena. So women were held more sacratively in the area of religion than in any other place. You can see that they didn't do much other than take care of the affluent women didn't do much except for take care of the house and the children. The children and slaves would be the ones that went out into public to go shopping. You didn't see very many women out there. And poor women, they would be working jobs, whether they be tending sheep, working as spinners, weavers, potters, all sorts of whatever jobs that they could find. And then finally is educating the youth. All right, and again, if you haven't caught on to this already, it's a very male-centric, dominated society. And so the boys are the ones who go to school. If their family can afford it. If they can't afford it, then the boys work, get jobs and go to work. But they learn how to read, write, study music. They learn how to debate. That's what rhetoric means, okay? Because debate is, again, a part of this everyday lifestyle that they live in. And they also in Athens, they do receive this military training. However, they're not as strongly focused on military as the Spartans are. They're more encouraged to learn and be academic than the Spartan society is. All right. If you have any questions, please bring them to class. Otherwise, we'll dive a little bit deeper to this into our next class. Take care for now. Ta-ta.